Thank you very much for choosing to watch this video. You can also catch this as a podcast, transcription, or article on cruxinvestor.com. And of course, for our Crux Investor Club members, you get access to company reports, very detailed institutional grade reporting. You get free training videos. You get commentary from market experts from all around the world. And of course, we do interview summaries to save you time should you wish. We caught up earlier today with Joe Hebert, who's the CEO of OutCrop Gold, TSX-V prospect generator, or at least a hybrid generator, in that they also do drilling. They've raised $5.75 million recently. Eric Sprott is nearly a 20% shareholder. Management team holds 25%. I like prospect generators. They tend to be a little bit more honest, authentic, and kind of tell you it like it is, mostly because they're operating off of vapor. These guys have got 3 targets, 2 of which they've parked up. One, Santa Ana, which they're going to spend their time, money, and effort on. I quite like their approach to the way they're going to go about developing this. They're chasing high-grade, narrow veins. Some chatter in the marketplace about that. You can we get into that in the call, actually. He seems very confident about their ability to move this thing forward, and at which point someone else steps in and takes over. So do take a look in the description below. The multitude of discussion points, anything interesting in particular, click on the number. That's a timestamp. That'll jump you through that part of the interview. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy what he has to say. Joe, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, Matthew. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. First time we've spoken, and obviously first time we've heard this story, so looking forward to it. But so where in the world are you?
I'm currently in Fort Myers, Florida. Colombia has an embargo on entry of foreigners, and actually restrictive travel in the country. And so I'm just waiting to go down there again. But I have a excellent crew working on there now.
Fantastic. You in touch every day?
Oh, yeah. Several times a day with everyone. I live vicariously. I can't be there to look at the core, so I get pictures from WhatsApp every day, and it keeps you excited, even though you can't be there.
So you're being effective. That's the main thing. Hey, well, given we've not heard this story before, why don't you give us that 1-minute overview on the business, and we'll pick it up from there.
Sure. Colombia. OutCrop is a sort of a hybrid generator in Colombia, prospect generator in Colombia. When they say hybrid, we will do drilling as part of the joint venture model to add value, especially where it's fairly direct and relatively cheap exploration to significantly add value to the project. We've been in Colombia in our entire focus now for 8 years. We've built an incredibly strong portfolio, and what we aren't currently drilling will go to funding joint venture. So we have 2 more. We have 3 flagship properties, and one we're drilling until further notice, and the others will try to seek funding joint ventures on.
Okay, so let's be really clear about what you are, because when hybrids are involved, people kind of don't know where to go. So prospect generator, we understand. So what's your version of that?
Yeah, we drill. We're not against drilling our own projects if there's a specific reason to do it and add value. Basically, if it's a no-brainer, we'll drill it.
Right. Okay. But you mentioned so only when you're in a JV, or you're drilling outside of any JV in place?
Yes. We'll drill outside of the JV. Yeah. We'll drill outside of the JV 100% property, even though we intend to continue to bring in joint venture partners, hopefully majors if possible, to fully fund other projects.
Okay. In this gold environment, are you tempted to be more than just a prospector? And I don't mean a hybrid prospector. I mean, become an explorer, possibly more. Or are you sticking to the knitting?
I think in this market, you have to be reactive to value. And we're fully funded to drill 1,600 meters a month for at least till next June. And actually, we would probably tee up another prospect that might be Calca or Majama, where we would do at least a scout drilling program and then use those results to attract better quality agreements and better quality companies to the project.
Okay, so tell me about the team then, because the reason why you kind of stick to the knitting is because that's what you've always done. So what's your track record? Tell me about that.
Well, I've worked for Placer Dome, Uranix, Superior Metals, some short contracts for Major, Freeport McMoran, extensive generative work in Mongolia, Suriname, and a bit in Mexico. And then I started working in Colombia in 1997, actually, or doing a big mapping project on Marmato, which is currently been divested, I think, by Gran Colombia to Calda, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've had a lot of time in Colombia, and I tell you what Colombia offers is it's the last place in the Andes to work where we acquire outcropping deposits. It's not conceptual. It's put your hand on it and drill it.
Right. What about the rest of the team?
Oh, I'm sorry. The rest of the team is we have a VPX, Dave Thomas, who's married to a Colombian, lives in Bogota. And then the rest of the entire team of geologists, GIS support, and other technical work is all Colombian. And so it's, and I would say probably that's a big draw because it's just we can do work that you couldn't do if you didn't have Colombians on the ground.
Okay. So up until about the end of May, you were a $15-20 million company. The market's suddenly gone nuts. You're a beneficiary of that, but you haven't seen these dizzy heights for a long time, since back in middle of 2016. What's driving that?
Yes. I think what's really driving it is we've got a strong message that's being received by the market in Santa Ana. It really correlates with delivering some pretty impressive, up to over 4 kilograms silver in our drilling, up to 37 grams gold. And it's just people are interested in the story, and to date we've said everything we've done everything we said we'd do.
Okay, but you're chasing narrow veins. That hasn't traditionally been a very exciting story. Is this just because silver is doing what it's doing at the moment? People are listening, while silver's at these prices, or have you actually delivered real value in the ground?
No, I think we deliver real value in the ground. If you look at it historically, actually narrow veins have produced more silver metals than than any other deposit type. The other thing too is that we've been upfront about the narrow veins, but they're usually in packages. So we have several examples. We have one example in Roberto Tovar, which we can composite 3 veins over 18 meters, straight line dilution, and still arrive at 450 grams silver. And that's almost 50% more than the average grade that's in production right now for silver mines. The other is the number of faces. The number of veins will result in a number of faces that will result in a number of flexibilities in future mining if it comes to that. It'll be shrink stope at 1.2 meters. You can certainly do it. It'd be slusher stopes at 1.8 meters, and then it would be composited high angle veins at high bulk tonnage underground. So it's all a matter of grade. And actually, with narrow veins, very high grade, you move less tons than wide veins, because it's just the wide and high grade veins, a unicorn. They don't exist.
So there's been some unfavorable comparisons made this week. So there's a company, it shall remain nameless, but with very similar setup to yours. And I think the comparisons are being made. So what's your response to that?
There's three topics, I think, or there's 3 distinctions that can be made. Size of the chutes. We have 200 meter continuous chutes at 10 grams equivalent gold, 800 grams equivalent silver. These things are massive with respect to epithermal systems. The grade contour is excellent. We don't have any knolls within the high grade. Every hole is within a 10 gram gold. Every high grade hole is within a 10 gram gold, 800 gram equivalent silver contour. And they can, and then we have the composited veins. We have vein packages so that you may have narrow veins, but you might mine 3 of them in a slot at over 18 meters at 450 grams. So, narrow veins are sort of the basis of what you have to work with, but depending on their characteristics, people mine them. It's better than, say, some of the current silver production.
Okay, so prospect generator. That's a tough life, and like I say, up until end of May, you're sort of sub $20 million. So how do you go about making yourself attractive for what's to come? I.e., getting a JV or getting some sort of partner to come in and fund the next phase, or for you to hand over for them to deliver the next phase. How does that usually work, and why is it different today?
I think how it works, how it's different presently is I can tell you that Colombia was a real dry spell, honestly, for prospect generators. That did move us towards drilling because we couldn't sit on the money we raised. Also news like Santa Ana drives joint venture interest from companies. I will say that Colombia, majors don't go into Colombia except by juniors. And, look in the phone book in Colombia, and there isn't many companies to go to. So we've noticed a big uptick in companies that want to talk to us, want to visit us when they can, want to visit projects. And, it's there's no rule that says you can't JV and drill. It's not commonly done. But really, the eyes are on us for that drilling, those drill results we produced. I'm meeting with 3. I have online meetings with 3 majors coming up in Beaver Creek, the Gold Summit, and I'm fielding calls. And we're not in a hurry to joint venture Santa Ana because we control we control catalysts that way. But at the same time, they're looking at our other projects.
But you're going to have to at some point, right? You've got enough money to do your drilling 1,600 meters per month till next June. Okay, so you're in control to that degree. But in this environment, other companies are trying to accelerate those timelines, their time horizons, their targets, because they don't know when this thing's going to last to. Especially silver, fairly erratic commodity at the best of times. So why are you not changing your plans?
Yeah, we're bringing in a second rig on September 8th. And what we'll do with that is we are currently only drilling, we've got 3 chutes identified. We've only drilled them to 200 meters. And with that second rig, if we don't have additional chutes heat up to drill for the second rig, we can come in and set up on the same or similar stations and drill from 200 to 400 meters. And it's looking like those chutes are going to extend that deep. And if we're in the middle of about a 5,000 sample soil sampling program. We're coming up on over 1 kilometer of trenching. If we can advance, if those result in additional targets, also some gradient resistivity, if those generate targets ahead of us, we can easily bring in a third rig in 6 months.
Okay. That's interesting. And what does that do? I think, does 1 rig deliver 1,600 meters a month, or is that 2 rigs?
That's 2 rigs.
That's 2 rigs. Okay, so that's the pace possibility of a third. Let's come back to what a JV looks like, because I think of prospect generators as purists almost in a way. They are slightly more realistic about how things work, because you're operating on vapor most of the time, and it's I guess sometimes for the fun of it, it feels like, but. Tell me, give me a realistic view of what a JV looks like in this environment, what you think it could be, because this is different from anything you've operated in the last, certainly 3-4 years.
Yeah. For us, I think the trigger would be when we are about to enter the resource, or when the project's ready to enter a resource delineation stage. And what the deal would look like in this case with a bona fide discovery and high grade would be probably a the structure, the framework of the deal would be a 51 JV and then a 70, maybe a 70 JV at their option. And that total spend would exceed, in this case, because we would have resources to delineate, would exceed $20 to $25 million.
So they would come in and you'd be fully carried, or you'd have to put your portion
Fully carried.
Fully carried. That's what you'd like.
Yeah. When it's, I mean, we're not miners right now. The company has mined before. It's certainly less fun than exploration, but and less forgiving. But I don't think we're going to become miners.
Okay, so you've got enough money. You're focusing on Santa Ana. You do have these other two projects. They're parked up for now. In reality, there's some historical data there. I mean, are you going to reassess those? Are those sort of, I mean, are they genuinely candidates for future work, or are you constantly looking for new stuff?
Oh, we're constantly looking for new stuff. We're actually even considering, maybe another jurisdiction, but it would be limited in focus. But if you look at Calca, I mean, there's 22,000 meters in our Calca project. It's a huge porphyry. The veins were never honored in the models. We've relogged. We have over 35 intercepts of epithermal veins, and whereas you have an uninteresting porphyry of about 45 to 55 million tons at roughly half a gram. We think with a fairly small program like Santa Ana, come into the core of the porphyry and drill out high-grade veins within it, model that, and increase that, maintain the tonnage or increase the tonnage and increase the deposit to a 1.5 gram bulk mineable deposit. Majama is very similar. It's probably technically superior, possibly to Santa Ana, the potential, I mean. And that's because you have cluster veins of up to 8 veins over half a kilometer. The miners we know, the artisan miners we know that let us in the mines, they're producing at 23 grams per ton gold and over 200 grams silver. And these things, Majama's could be very similar to a Barotica. So there's certainly going to be people interested in both projects. And I would say we've got advanced discussions on at least 3 projects for joint venture, which we've done minimal exploration to maybe as much as $100,000 or $200,000. And if we were offered a JV on those, we would probably accept that. And so those would be advanced.
How much money does it cost you to keep those ticking over while you're focused on Santa Ana? Is it?
Minimal, really. It's holding costs, their titles. They have a canon fee. They have to have a work program in place, but that doesn't have to include drilling. And so outside of Santa Ana, we might have a spend of 100,000 every 6 months on holding those, roughly.
Okay, so it's not a biggie. It's not a biggie. So are you attributing any value on the balance sheet to either of those at the moment?
Yeah, I mean there is a value on the balance sheet, but it's pretty much our dollars invested. It doesn't reflect really their value in any sense.
Okay, and talking of reflecting value with gold and silver where it's at the moment, you've seen this pop in the share price in the last 3 months. Do you think you're overvalued, given what you've been able to tell the market so far?
No, not overvalued. I mean, you saw us go to 88 cents, and you certainly saw a pullback from there. I can't say as I'm surprised, but I think, just benchmarking some other companies in a similar situation with respect to market cap, I think we still have a significant room to run.
The prospector at $55 million, that's pretty good going. For where you're at, you've still got another year's drilling ahead of you. What are you going to be able to tell the market over the next year that's going to get them remotely excited?
I think when we bring in the second rig on the 8th, you're going to see a assay turnaround of 2 weeks for the next 6 months anyway, maybe 7 months. And We expect, our next two targets teed up have El Dorado and Guanabara. El Dorado has as much as 180 grams gold and 2 kilograms silver over 0.6 meters, 0.12 meters, I believe. So our next targets are well supported by trenching. It's what we see at surface, we expect in the drilling. So I think you're just going to see a continual flow of good assays like in the past. They're going to conform to what people have seen so far and maybe higher. And then I think what we showed in our last news release in a couple of weeks ago is that we're now in Megapozo below the mined zone, and we are averaging up on our vein width. I think people are anxious to see that, and then I think that I think we'll pull together 1 or 2 JVs in the next 6 to 8 months.
6 to 8 months.
Well, let's say 1 in 6 months and 2 in 9 months, say.
Can I just ask, so what are they waiting for, or what are you waiting for? So it's got to take another 6 to 9 months.
Because major companies are slower than the second coming of Christ. It's just a fact. You baby them through the decision. It's like, guys, it's right here. And there's a big. I've been in big companies. No one wants to make a decision. So it goes down the food chain until someone makes a decision, and that's the way it's been in the past. We had Newmont, we've had Newcrest, and they're not companies, they're committees, honestly.
No one likes design by committee. Okay, so you're in your experience, there's a process you got to get through. There's a certain number of people you got to put in the hopper at the top to kind of get your one JV out of the bottom end. And it's more a case of you don't know anything that we don't. It's just, there's a process you got to go through.
Yeah, and you can, you can look at our Antares and possibly make it's right near Gramalote. We all know B2Gold is their only project in Colombia is Gramalote. We're in the same district. We have a bigger soil anomaly. And you can probably guess that the companies, maybe a Nuco that might be attracted to Majama because it's so much like Barutica. And then in the past, you might recall, we had a fully funded generative alliance with Agnico Eagle only 3 years ago. They spent over $3.5 million. We spent 20% of that just to generate projects. And Agnico Eagle has an office in Medellin, and we can help them get traction in Colombia again. So Colombia, Colombia is it's a bit of a tar baby, for some companies, but on the other hand, you have outcropping, big outcropping deposits still. So relatively speaking, the technical risk is quite low. And then good experienced companies that deliver and technically can be relied on by majors to either perform or to generate projects for them. Like I say, I can't think of another one in Colombia right now.
Okay. Given I said earlier that I think prospect generators are slightly more realistic, they're slightly more honest about the situation because they operate through tough conditions. In your experience, what is the kind of re-rate that you would be looking for once you do sign a JV? What are you looking for? What's a good outcome for you?
You mean in terms of a good outcome for us to leave the market cap side of it alone for just a moment? The good outcome for us is a much bigger spend from third parties that just comes into the company. We don't have to raise, we don't have to dilute, and they keep for relatively long term because it looks like a discovery in front of them, and And then I think we would see at least a 10 or 20 million market cap per venture.
Okay, interesting. What do you make this gold market? We're going to see a pullback?
Yes, everything pulls back, I think. But on the other hand, boy, I don't want to get too greedy. I'm happy as a clam. $2,000. I mean, what is that? Has it been $2,000?
Yeah,
I mean, in '83.
Yeah. Well, if you do inflation adjusted, it's been $2,000 once, and pretty near $2,000 on another occasion. I think we're talking 2011.
I think silver's going to hit $30.
You do?
Yeah. And the other thing too is that, just looking at the performance lately with respect to where else it can go, everyone talks about the historical ratio, but it's real. It's gone from 97 to 80 in the last less than 3 months, because we had to revise all our equivalent calculations. But this is great.
It is good.
These things don't come very often in a career. I mean, you can count them on one hand, and it's where all the excitement of the job is.
But I guess what I'm asking is, as a CEO, you've got to have a view, especially doing what you do. You've got to have a view of what the future looks like and how long it's going to hold, because peaks and troughs is the nature of what we do, of how we make money. So your view is silver's going to go to 30. How long do you think this thing lasts? You've been through a few cycles. Or is this so different? This is so different.
Well, it's certainly different, but it's not that different. I mean, maybe the numbers are different, but a 3 or 4 year bull is not unusual, and I don't really see any large picture things looming to detract from what's driving it now. And it's cheap money, it's cheap capital. It's investments basically protected by the Federal Reserve, in a sense from heavy retraction. And gold's exciting right now, and it's just going to take a while for that enthusiasm to peel off. I mean, I can tell you that we have a lot of investors that are very happy because they've made money, and they think they'll make money again, and if they, they're sort of forgiving. Well, not entirely forgiving, but they're a bit forgiving if you don't. So I look at a situation where the company's not too worried about the high level metrics for the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay. And there's no sign of anyone bailing out on you here, taking advantage of the prices you're reaching for the first time in 3 years.
Oh, I think. I'm sorry. Do you mean investors taking profits?
Yeah.
Well, they better. I want them to. Speaking of warrants, we have some warrant exercises that's taken an impact, but you can't really. To the tune of. We've been cash flow positive for 3 months with this drilling. You really can't fault people for taking advantage of their warrants. Internally, none of us can take any, not that we would, but we can't take any option, because every time we get into a brokered placement, we're locked out for 4 to 6 months. I think, and then we have this last financing coming, free trading, I believe October 19th. But I think what you're going to see is we're just going to absorb it. I think the interest is out there for people looking for big positions, and it's going to be a buying opportunity. And let's see what happens on about October 18th. I think it's going to be a whimper. I don't think we're going to see a lot of.
What was it done at? Sorry,
to the share price.
Remind me, Joe. What was it done at?
28. And let's see, 28 cents unit, half warrant at
got it. Okay.
60, I think. I'm sorry, I'd have to check.
Interesting. And you guys are sitting on the management team sitting on, it says here 25%. So you're all got a very aligned position with shareholders. Okay, fine, noted. Okay,
I've never sold shares, so
good lad. That's what we want to see. Hey, well, look, Joe, look, thanks for that run through. That's interesting. I do like a prospect generator story. I think it's the fairy tale stuff, isn't it? If you get it right, it really, really, really works. So you've got enough money to keep you going till next June. That's exciting. Got 2 drills, potential for a third. You keep that information coming out to the market, because I think people want to know how you're getting on.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, there was a little bit of too long of an interval, I think, for a while, but with 2 rigs starting the 8th, I think, once we get the lab loaded up, we'll see assays every 2 weeks.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, stay in touch. Let us know how you get on. We would be delighted to hear your story for sure.
Oh, anytime. Hey, you're an interesting guy to talk to,
Thank you.
Interesting questions, good questions.